So now we've allowed this dough to sit overnight, and we're coming back, and we're going to pull out what we need for use within the next 4 hours. Again, we want to give about 1 hour of time for the dough to warm up just a little bit, not to get warm. Alright, so one of the things that you can see here is our dough has changed quite a bit overnight in size and that. Fermentation did not stop, we just slowed it down or retarded it in the cooler overnight. But we can see that the size of the dough ball has changed. The yeast has started to gas and cause the dough to rise. We probably wouldn't want to just pull this cover off, but we wanted to show you what the dough would look like, and then just leave this sit at the ambient temperature of the shop for about a period of an hour, hour and a half, and then you can start working with this dough at that point in time. As you approach the dough box itself and getting the dough piece out, you want to gently pick it up and try and maintain as much of that round shape as possible. Whether you're tossing by hand or hand stretching, running it through a sheeter or putting it into a press, this round shape will help ensure that you get a nice round pizza as well. And we're going to work this on the sheeter so that we can then finish hand tossing the piece. Put a little flour on it, and we're going to put it through the pre-sheeter. You'll notice that it kind of elongates it this direction. We're going to turn it 90 degrees. And we're going to put it through the second part of the sheeter. Place it through. Again, we notice an elongation that way. So we'll turn it. And then one more time. The number of times that you put it through here is really dependent on you and how much you want to do it. You don't want to do too much work too fast, or you'll tear the dough piece, or it may want to stick to the rollers. What we were wanting to show here is just getting the piece started out so that you have something to show for hand tossing.
Jeff is running this dough through the sheeter, and this is our target diameter. It's a 12-inch disc, and you can see here, I'll just place it on top of the disc so you can see that it is indeed smaller than the disc. And the reason why we do this is fairly thick now, and we have not completely degassed the dough. There's very little degassing of the dough being done at this point. But what we're going to do is we're now going to hand stretch to get the full size of the disc. That way we kind of maintain the gas within the dough, and we get the hand stretch characteristics yet. I call it the great cheater for hand stretching. I'm going to use the back of my hands and the back of my knuckles to stretch this out a little bit. Be careful, if you hold it right in the middle, this is where most people make a mistake. They hold it right in the very middle, and they begin stretching by pulling their knuckles out and turning it. If you do that, all of your stretching is done in the very center, and you end up with a very thin center. Instead, move your fingers. You can see here where my knuckles are actually at. They're more towards the edge, so I'm stretching that edge a little bit more. Have it draped over the edge. If you need to stretch the outer edge, you can simply pick it up and stretch that edge just ever so slightly. And I'm keeping my fingers probably at least a ½ inch to a ¼ inch away from those edges. And the last thing I'm going to do is stretch it a little bit in the middle. And I can now test fit to the disc. And you can see that I've got it fit on there perfectly. If you want to add a little bit of flair, I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I can simply bring it up and give it a simple toss.
He has almost kind of a twisting action to it, and that's his lead-off hand. And then he's also catching that back on the backs of his hands. He's not catching it with his fingertips. So if you catch it with your fingertips, people have a tendency to tear the dough piece when you do that.
One of the common faults that I see is people trying to carry it like this. But when you do that, you're just going to stretch it. Instead, catch it, pick it up and drape it over the back of your hand or your arm. You're splitting that load over a lot greater area. A lot fewer chances of stretching it out of shape. To dock or not to dock. Here is a typical dough docker, and some people call it a perforator. This is not a perforator. They're really flat, they're blunt on the end. And the idea here is to simply take that dough and to press it together very, very tightly. And what you're actually doing is stapling the top and bottom of the dough together You're not preventing it from blistering or bubbling, but you're controlling that blistering and bubbling. I don't like to dock it when it's on a screen or on a disc, and the reason why is as the docker runs over it, you can hear it, you can actually see it from the bottom here. These pins go through a little bit. They will actually force the dough through the holes. If that dough expands on the back side of the hole, it'll be like a plug, effectively locking the dough to the disc. Makes it very difficult to get off. Instead, all I'm going to do is up on the bench. Just with a single pass, that's all you need. And then they'll go back and forth the other way. And if you overdock, all you're doing now is you're stapling this dough shut, closed. There's no expansion to it. You're going to get very little jump or lift off of it. This is all you need. Ready for saucing. That'd be ready to apply the sauce, cheese, whatever toppings are called for, and it's ready to go to the oven. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to form this dough out completely by hand. We're not going to use any mechanical assistance at all. Just strictly hand forming. First thing I want to do is carefully remove my dough from the box, trying to maintain its round shape. And I'm going to dip it into flour and bring a little bit of flour up to the bench. Spread it around a little bit, lay it down onto the bench top, and keeping my fingers away from that edge. What I'm actually beginning to do here is press this out. You can see here I've left a heavy piece of dough in the middle. I flip it over to the other side, and I begin working these edges out. Remember, the edges are always the hardest part to get worked out. So now I can begin working the center piece out. I'm using this hand here to push out, this hand here to kind of anchor it and pull it back a little bit. I'm not laying them on that edge. If I do that, then I'm going to degas these edges and I'm not going to get that nice rise on those edges. Once I get it worked out a bit, I can then take this and I can begin working this edge a little bit thinner. Once I get this started, you can see how it's all wrinkled now because I've got my stretch from the middle. When you see that, all we need to do is open up these edges a little bit more. I can then test fit it to a screen. We're a little bit short yet, so we can go ahead and we can continue stretching this. Every now and then you're going to develop a hole in it, but don't let that bother you too much because it's very simple just to go back, and if you develop a hole from stretching it, simply go back and pinch it shut and it'll close back up again.